Hello and welcome to the Showfile Podcast, a podcast for performance nerds. My name's Tom, founder of A Work in Progress, a live electronic music direction company, and this is the Synths episode. Oscar and I rambled for about 3.5 hours about synthesizers, and I cut it down to about 2.5 hours of kind of stuff you'd actually want to watch. But that's still a little bit long for a Showfile episode, so we decided to turn it into 2 separate episodes, like a 2-for-1 on synthesizers for you. So enjoy! What a good way to start.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's make a patch.
Make a little bass patch?
We're going to make a little bass patch because if you, when you're listening through these stems, we've got our nice little sampler that we've made, just nice and simple. No bullshit. Simple sampler. Plays that lead line. Kind of one of the other main feature in this track is the bass line, really, if we're honest about it. Chug.
Yeah.
Chug, 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 chug. If we solo that bass line. It's a very Moogie sound.
Yep.
Chances are, when I wrote this, I made it with the Moog. Well, no, they were made in a coffee shop. It definitely didn't have the Moog out. Thanks to my expensive cup of coffee. I'm just here with my expensive coffee and my expensive synthesizer. Being a total hipster wanker. No, it probably was some sort of Ableton synth, likely wavetable. But it's a very Moogie sound. So probably if we were actually making a show with this, we'd probably be like, well, yeah, it'd be fun to have a Moog.
Yep.
Do that.
Definitely.
If we had a Moog on offer.
Yeah.
And then modulate it.
Yeah.
Well, you could play it with an ARP.
Yeah.
Arguably.
Yeah. I think depending on, it would kind of be, do you have other stuff going on?
Yeah.
Let's sequence it. If not, probably quite a vibe to play it.
Yeah, totally. Often though, when you're sound designing anyway, it's quite useful to have the MIDI running to the synth. Even if we're programming a part that someone's going to play, quite often the workflow is going to be something like, can you play it and I'll quickly tweak it and let's talk about it as we tweak it. Or you'll be like, let's just quickly put the MIDI in, or grab the MIDI out of your original session and just loop that for a bit while we just like work on this sound. So that you've got, all of your hands ready to change this while you're changing this, and only think about the sound rather than also having to think about the playing, unless you're a good enough player, but that's besides the point, isn't it? Yeah. So I do have the MIDI from the original session ready to send to this Moog if I unmute it.
I've got a little initial patch.
Great. Perfect. So actually, if I just solo... Oh, there's the Moog. Oh, that's definitely a Moog initial patch.
Oh, yeah.
I just leave that running for the rest of the podcast. It's going to be great. Everybody's going to love that so much. Look, so this is what our Moog is sounding like at the moment, and if we go quickly back to where we need it to be, I don't know how I made that. If I didn't make that with the Moog, actually,
it's very Moogy.
That so bouncy. Or maybe it's a sidechain. You can lie about a lot of shit when you get the sidechain right. Yeah. All right. Well, let's just like get into that. And I guess one of the immediate features is the arpeggiator on it. Yeah. And there'd be a decision to be made on whether you're gonna, if you're sequencing, probably sequence that arpeggiator from the box. Yeah. If you're playing it, it's more likely going to be easier to use an arpeggiator on the synthesizer. Yeah. Arpeggiators are a broad topic. And getting the best of them is a broad topic. Yeah. You're quite good at arpeggiators. We've done some really cool stuff while filming the latest performance techniques actually with you and arpeggiators. And often when I work with people and work with artists who are really into doing interesting things with arpeggiators, there's all these like weird little techniques that people just go, oh yeah, just do this. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. And I think Ableton's ARP is quite a good example of something that you can experiment with quite a lot. I think it's a great arpeggiator.
Definitely. Like, it's not going to do the weird, like really, really weird creative stuff that some third-party ones will. But because you can stack it with all these other things to modulate it and to change the input of it, and, like, what was the thing you were doing the other day was like randomizing an input to it.
Yeah.
Just immediately made cool shit.
Yeah. Yeah, which is great and something that you can actually do because it's all the Ableton MIDI effects.
Yeah, and then like just track the output of it for ages, choose a bit that you like.
Yep.
There's your interesting ARP.
Yeah.
I mean, you could sit there and struggle with making your own for hours on end. Or you could start, like using your time a bit more effectively and being like, cool, let's randomize the ARP into it and let's design a sound while I'm doing it and like be tracking that randomization so you can... I'm talking way too much about studio producing rather than performing now, because that is definitely a very long-winded way of coming up with ARPs for your live show. We're recreating source here. We're not making new source most of the time. It's very grey, actually, very grey. Anyway,
it's a big grey area.
So recreating this ARP, fairly simple, right?
Yeah.
Go on, Oscar, give me some insight.
Well, that's what, eighth notes.
Yeah, pretty simple. Pretty easy. Am I doing this with the Ableton one then? Or do you want to do it
not? I think that's probably a bit more useful to people.
There's something to always watch out for. I'm going to load this arpeggiator MIDI effect onto it in Ableton. But something to like watch out for with Ableton's MIDI clock is it's relatively reliable most of the time. It's probably the best way to describe it. They haven't implemented it badly. I think MIDI's the problem rather than Ableton being the problem.
Yeah.
The MIDI's a problem.
Yeah.
MIDI is quite bad. If we're really honest.
Yeah.
It was made in the 80s and it definitely feels like that to use.
Yeah. It is the best, but it's also...
It's the best because everything has MIDI implementation. It's kind of universally the standard.
Yeah.
But it's not modern.
No. That's very true.
It's not modern, and it doesn't work like a modern piece of technology, which is good and bad.
Yeah.
But also I'm not here with better solutions or alternatives, so maybe don't listen to me. But yeah, like Ableton's arpeggiator also will be super quick to do this because it's already locked in to the. There you go.
There we go.
That'll be how I made that bass line then. That's already there. I'd probably open the gate of the arpeggiator there with just like the length of the notes that the arpeggiator is outputting. And you can hear as I open it, it just turns into a drone. As I close it, I close that gate, you can hear it becoming way more staccato. Something that you don't hear. That's a word you don't hear a lot of producers using nowadays.
Yeah.
That becomes much tighter and punchier. So also that's like a general arpeggiator thing. So that is the sequence.
Yep.
You could also do it with the Moog. With the Moog one, it would be relatively simple for us to program.
Yeah.
But let's use this Ableton one for now. Let's assume for our gig we're going to be sequencing via Ableton.
Yeah.
I'll make us a nice little loop of this.
Great.
So that just keeps going.
Cool.
We're probably the wrong octave, I'd say.
That's
there
better.
you go.
And then I'll leave the filter up for now, but sounds like a saw wave to me.
So just turned off
rounded.
those other oscillators. So we're just using one oscillator at the moment.
Yep. I've just got oscillator 1 in the right octave. Change the envelopes a little bit, make it a little bit less staccato.
Pulling down that release.
Yeah. So that's a bit more where we are amplitude wise.
Yeah. It's got a bit more shape because with the sustain on that envelope, on the amp envelope there, just turning that down a little bit gives that note a bit of like punch, and then the decay, as the decay comes down, like that's where you're getting that punch from.
Yeah.
Anything kind of transient like that, you're looking at your amp envelope to simulate those kinds of dynamics.
Yeah.
And then bringing the release into whatever you need it to do.
Yep.
Should we just quickly reference the bass sound that we're trying to recreate? So we've definitely got one low note. There might be a second oscillator doing an octave in that.
Yeah.
Or it might be the filter. I can't quite tell.
Let's have a go. So we've got a fairly short filter envelope.
So if I just solo that MIDI for you again.
Then we can bring our filter envelope up into the filter. Maybe a bit more resonance.
Yeah, so now we're starting to get that little filtery punch noise. Maybe a bit too much res. You can kind of already hear that, like, that's where you're getting those like resi acid sounds from, right?
Yeah.
Like that's literally how you make that. Man, it's so good when it happens. I love that.
Then we can try another octave. A little bit of a higher octave there.
Is that just one octave up?
Yep.
Doing the same waveform?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
I reckon probably less release on the amp.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a sweet spot in the middle somewhere where you're going to need that filter to be. Yeah, I mean, that sounded pretty good.
Yeah.
And then let's A-B that to our...
Okay. So a bit more...
Probably a bit more square, isn't it?
And a bit more filter envelope, maybe.
Yeah. So this is like literally as a process, A-Bing between different sounds. That feels...
It's with a square wave.
Oh, maybe it was a square wave in the first place rather than saw.
Yeah.
There you go.
Odd harmonics.
Yeah, and that's really fun. Okay, so let's A-B that. Oh no, you're right. You probably could do a little bit of extra release, can you? And then it's just literally tweaking tiny little amounts until we're like, cool, we're like sitting in those sweet spots.
Yeah.
Of those sounds, you know, a little bit less decay, a little bit more release here, like just move that filter to just the right little spot. Because often what we're doing, especially when we're recalling patches digitally, we want them to recall with, well, I call it a boot state. And we're looking for those sounds to recall the way that we need them to start with the part, rather than recalling how they would like end, you know, like maybe with like your filter open, your delay right up. That might be like really washy and like not be at all what you need it to sound like. Like you need to come in and be like, okay, cool, this sounds correct.
Yep.
This sounds correct. This is right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, you know, making sure that, man, that's really good.
That's quite a nice bass sound.
Just like looking over the record, like, it's not peaking, is it? That sounds really good. I really don't want to have to do that again. And then if we A-B that to our... And actually, do you know what is quite interesting there? Is if you're trying to figure out which waveform it is. So that's the original track, and you can hear it in that higher octave much more clearly a square wave.
Yeah.
Than a saw.
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe that's just me, but sometimes they trick me.
Yeah.
No, like definitely. Which one is which?
Yeah.
Especially when they're really low, because like there's lots and lots of ways to make very fat bass sounds. And you know, using square waves is sometimes a good way of doing that.
Yeah.
As opposed to saws. So maybe if I mute this bass line and we can hear that new bass part that you've made with the track. And that's great. And like now you're, you know, now you've got that running, you'd be able to do kind of whatever you want. Some little tweaks on that filter.
Yeah.
Little flickers of joy.
Yeah. You probably bring it up into the chorus.
Yeah, totally. A little bit more open, a bit more drive for that chorus.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that open for the higher notes. It's cool. And back down for that verse again. And like literally the arrangement of that tweaking that you were doing is very true to a lot of music, certainly in the electronic space. You know, if you're looking for like a place to start in terms of your performance with it, you just like straight down that, like, right, how do we build into the next part of the song? How do we bring in and, you know, make it obvious that we're about to change into something new, rather than just like randomly turning shit.
Yeah.
You know, trying to be deliberate with these,
yeah,
with
definitely.
those modulations.
Yeah, especially when we're working with music that has a bit more repetition than like a traditional song structure. So that
100%.
change in sound is going to be even more emphasized.
Yeah, absolutely. The more those sounds open up, the more they create build-ups and breakdowns, and you can emote quite a lot with sound design. And, you know, all of electronic music is evidence of that.
Yeah.
That, you know, those subtle movements and changes in the sound actually can do quite a lot.
Yeah.
I guess that's one of the really interesting things about modern pop production is that it takes all of those things that you kind of already know, or all those things that have been explored in that space, and then add that to, you know, more traditional songwriting and very catchy hooks. Yeah. And then you have quite, you know, pop music nowadays is really good.
Yeah.
Like, as much as, you know, people will be grumpy and say it's shit. But, you know, arguably, there's a lot of knowledge in how to achieve really, like, sonically things that are really addictive to listen to.
Yeah.
And, you know, that comes from little things like that you know, that's techno and electro and the house, and we're doing all of that. And then when you put that into, you know, a Charlie XCX record, for example, you've got something that's quite fucking good fun.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
these things cross so many boundaries, especially nowadays when, like, everybody's on a fucking computer in their bedroom making tracks. Okay, so that Moog patch is, look, it's cool. It does the job. It ticks lots of boxes. It is, it's very electronic. It fits the track.
Yep.
There's a million parts in that tune that you could use, and we just came to arpeggiated bass.
Yeah,
we're in
definitely.
a Moog mood.
Yeah.
A Mooged. Oh my god. I can't believe that we haven't even done that many of these, and I'm already at the point where I'm making shit synth jokes. Just out of the gates.
Yeah,
here I am. Shit synth joke dad. That's me.
In it. But then if we had that on a gig, we'd probably have it sidechained by something like the Quad Cortex.
Yeah, or the HX Stomp, or, you know, there's a Suono Buono is a company that does literally a sidechain pedal that you can just send MIDI notes to, you know, also an option. Yeah. Or the front of house engineer will do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, there's you kind of what then comes after that source is so dependent on the team that you've got, the size of the show that you have, how many people are touring with it, how much gear can you afford to fly, freight, whatever. You know, put in the back of your mum's car, like whatever it is, helps you inform those decisions and what's going to be the most practical thing for you to do. Because, you know, also, as much as we're using like a Moog Sub 37, which is a really, really nice synthesizer, that theory that you just did there and like that patch that you made is kind of just a subtractive bass patch.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, definitely.
It's very much like any subtractive synth could kind of make that. You could make that on a Behringer synth. Yeah. If you wanted.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be a more accessible way. In hindsight, we maybe should have done that, made it more accessible for the podcast. But I just have a Sub 37 in my studio, so whatever.
Yeah. And then everyone, I mean, it's also like, as up to you. Everyone's will find a synth that they attach themselves to, and often it's like part of people's sounds. Like, I'm totally in love with Prophets.
Right. And that's like your poly. Is the Prophet. You know, my poly is the Peak. To be honest, you know, and literally, yeah, you're describing exactly what I'm saying here, isn't it? Because it's like the Sub 37, I fucking love that synth so much.
Yeah.
And I sold a couple of things to get it. And it just clicks with me in a way that lots of boxes don't. And the same with the Peak, you know. Yeah. Like the Peak, I got the Peak because I used to have an Access Virus, the Desktop TI.
Yeah. Complicated.
It's very complicated, and I did have a brief love affair with it where I thought it was great. And then I don't know whether it was just the amount that I was touring or whatever, I just started to fall out of love with it.
Yep.
And I think the Peak got released around that time, and I think I'd like gone to like an Ovation thing and been like, oh, this is really cool actually, I really like this. I was like chatting to one of the guys a couple of doors down at the studios, and he was like, oh man, yeah, I'm just like, I fucking love Access Virus synths. I'm just looking for one at the moment. I was like, no way. So I really want to sell mine and get something else. And he bought it off me, and bless him, like 3 days later, he was like, come to the studio, I want to show you what I made with it. And like had just made all these patches.
Yeah.
Because he was just like, this is my synth.
Yeah.
I was like, this is brilliant. This is exactly where this synth needed to go. Like it needed to be rehomed with someone who is like really wants it.
Yeah.
And really wants to just spend their whole life with it musically. Because, you know, that's also not the first Moog I ever bought. You know, my first Moog was the Moog Subharmonicon.
Oh, mad.
Which I thought, oh yeah, this is going to be really cool. I watched all the fucking ambient videos, didn't I?
Yeah.
I believe the press release. As a man who's always against believing the press release, I believe the fucking press release. And I bought that, and we had it in here, and my God, getting a sound out of that wasn't weird ambient nonsense was impossible. I just didn't click with it. It didn't make sense. When I wanted something that was just easy, it didn't do easy. It did like weird stuff, and you can change the fucking tuning standard in it. Like, brilliant.
Yeah.
Magic. Trash for me. Yeah. I was hanging out with this composer at the time who's a good friend, and he was like, oh yeah, I want to know, like, it was like, what synths have you got at the moment? I'm kind of thinking about buying something. I was like, you need to get a Moog Subharmonicon. They're brilliant. It's so cool. Look at this video. And he went and bought one, and I sold mine quickly afterwards. Again, to like a guy. Like, this is like an insight into Tom's. I don't think I've ever told you any of this stuff, have I?
No.
This is like the first time my turbulent relationship with synthesizers.
That's
great. He bought one, but the thing is, like, he does like kind of contemporary classical music. He's a bit more experimental, and he did click with it in a big way. And he made lots of really good stuff with it. And he was like, I can't believe you sold yours. And the guy that I sold it to was like a modular synth head. Sold it to him on Reverb. He came and picked it up. And he's like, literally the excitement in his eyes. He was like, I've been trying to find one of these. Sick. I can't believe you were around the corner and had one. And I was just like, great. Like, rehoming synths to people who need them and are going to get the best from them is like, a personal joy of mine.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, you know, like selling that Subharmonicon funded the Sub 37. And then I got the Sub 37 and was like, right, yeah, it's not Moog. It was that I chose the wrong bass synth.
Yeah.
And the same with the Peak. It's like, arguably, it's quite similar to the Virus TI.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it does wavetable, you know, very deep modulation matrix that you can get really complex with and do really interesting stuff with. But when I first made a patch on the Peak, it was like, oh yeah, I just understand. And I've seen those eureka moments with artists that we've worked with. You know, we've taken them to product demo rooms, and then there's keyboards. You can put two keyboards next to each other that are basically the same fucking thing. Yeah. And they'll be like, this one's really good.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, from our perspective, it's like, well, you make all the same sounds with the other one there as well. But like, if you don't get it, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
No, it's weird how some stuff just clicks. It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you with the Pulsar, man. Like, you love that fucking Pulsar.
Oh, I love that thing so
That
much.
Pulsar is your entire life. But also, like, that's great, right? Like, you know how to make sounds with it. You intuitively just go like, yeah, cool. The Crocodile clips are my fucking jam. I look at it and I'm like, how do I make noises with this, Oscar? Can you just show me like what's going on before we start?
Yeah.
And you, to be fair, you did show me some really cool stuff with it, like that delay stuff that you do where you touch a couple of contacts and it.
Yeah, you can have that CV connect. Like your finger will create a CV connection
because it's got like basically it's just got like these little. Like they look like pennies basically, don't they?
Yeah.
Like a bunch of these like little metal contacts across the bottom of it. But the thing is, if you join them together using your body, you create a circuit.
Yep.
And that circuit is like the weird and wonderful circuit.
Oh yeah.
That's like how you get Pulsar to do really cool shit.
Yeah.
That's the master Pulsar advice that you gave me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that circuit you can send anywhere.
Oh man, like, and look, it's really cool. It's really cool, and it's not necessarily for everyone. But then, you know, if it creates the things that you're looking to create, like that's what's important.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and becomes even more important when you start getting away from musical traditional parts.
Yeah,
and into kind of weirder and wackier synth sounds.
Yeah.
And types of synthesis.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? One of the things that I really don't get on with that you have a really fun time with is, pardon me, all the Electron gear, which I don't know what it is about Electron OSs, but I find them infuriating.
Yeah. I mean, I can see why.
Yeah.
They are really, sometimes it's tricky and there's so many combinations and weird things that,
maybe it's because I've never had the time to sit down and go, okay, cool, like I'm going to become an Electron guy.
Mm.
I've always just been like, well, I've got a gig to make. Yeah. And this is holding us back.
I know. I think I wouldn't have unless I forced myself into it in that way.
Right.
Like I had like 3 tracks. 3 ambient tracks that I needed to play doorless. Right. And I upgraded from other sequences to an octatrack. Right. Like a week and a half before that gig.
Oh yeah, that'll fucking do it.
I was like, oh, okay, time to read this whole manual.
10 till 10, bro.
Yeah.
Read the whole manual and get the fucking thing out.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Like, they're tricky little fuckers.
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't mean they're not good as well, because like the shit that you do with them is awesome.
Oh, I love them. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people doing a lot of really cool stuff with them. Some people run their entire gigs off of them.
Yeah.
And so yeah, great, totally cool. Off your fuck, but like it's all right if you don't understand that stuff. It's all right to use other boxes. There's such a variety of technology that you can go and use and get into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. You can just find that thing that clicks with you.
Yeah, man. It's more important you can make on it than anything else. It doesn't matter how cool people say it is.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to make on it.
Oh, for sure.
If you can't make on it, just get something else.
Yeah.
Get something else. I guess it's time to move on to the experimental bit.
It is.
Experimental. Because that's where we really start making all the weird shit. It's quite fun.
It's quite fun.
It's quite fun. And that's like the kind of extra, okay, cool, we don't have any discerning parts, or the parts that we do have are not practical to recreate either with sampling or with the hard piece of hardware that you've got. Or it's so particular, there's no point trying to recreate it because you're not going to make any real gains from either a musical or a sonic perspective.
Yeah.
Or it's possible that the music is so minimal that there isn't any parts to be recreating.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like the drum machine just needs to run for the next 16 bars, but like, you could stand there and dance if you want.
Yeah.
Or you could start exploring something that's a bit different, that it wasn't necessarily there in the first place. So maybe we'll get into that. And to do that, we're going to have to use the bit of the GR1 and the fucking peak, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take 2 seconds and get a camera on them.
Yeah.
Loads.
the weird and the wacky.
The weird and the wacky. We're going to make some patches. Well, I say we're going to make some patches. We're going to do some stuff with the Peak and the GR1 and the Quad Cortex effects pedal. And kind of demonstrate other things you can be using your synths for in a show.
Yeah.
That isn't necessarily melodic or show critical.
Yeah.
We kind of, I guess that's a way that we'll categorize sounds quite a lot. Is like, right, is it show critical?
Yeah.
In which case, like, how much time do we need to put into it? Where does it need to go? Does it need to stay on track? Whatever.
Yeah, and I think lots of the time it's something that will add more of when shows grow.
Yeah.
And it becomes something
100%.
Like you're getting those one shots off track.
Yeah.
And those little build ups and those effect systems.
Yeah.
Out of the box and into pedals or modular systems or multi effects.
I mean,
kind of vibe.
Like as always with these podcasts, it's kind of like, right, well, you're sampling and directly sampling a stem. That's a great, like, okay, cool, we're going to have a show.
Yeah.
You're going to have a part that you can perform. With the hardware side, it's going to take a little bit more time, but you get a lot more flexibility in terms of your modulation and being able to divert a tiny bit from the record, but it still be the same. And then here we're looking at like, okay, cool, we've got a show that's out.
Yep.
It's good. Like we're starting to find the moments where it's not as engaging to play as it kind of needs to be. You know, the bits that need to be locked in are like locked. You know, we don't even need to think about it too much anymore. Like people could just play their parts.
Yeah.
So we need to start adding some extra spice, some extra little delicious bits that you know, make it unique and interesting and fun to play and all those kinds of things.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess we're going to make some effects.
Yeah.
To an extent. I mean, maybe we should talk quickly first about the different thing. Like, let's do some theory of it first, right?
Yeah.
So a quick and easy win on this would be to just stick a modular synth on and only put modules in it that do strange things as opposed to anything nice and easy and musical. That would be like a quick way to just go like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Modular synths are good for this because they don't really stay in tune and they don't really do the same thing every time.
Yeah, and if you send an LFO to an oscillator, you get something that's quite interesting and will whirl around up and down. And I guess the world of modular, having access to the amount of effects modules that you do is a bit of a game changer. I mean, we've got quite an unpredictable, interesting delay running right now. That if I stop what's going on, we can hear those tails that are a bit random and being pitched up.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I mean, that's just like interesting. But I mean, also like one of your drawbacks with that is like to have that different on another track, you're going to need to repatch, dial in your different settings every single time. Like we can't just go program change, here it is. I mean, this is also why modular makes great writing tool, great production tool. But you need to be prepared for the beast when you get to the show. And they're literally the heat, the humidity, all of that. I mean, we talked about this earlier. But it's the same stuff. And you know, this podcast, because there's a terrible noise floor today. I don't even know how I've ended up with that on the mic. But this lovely little ambient loop that is just kept going is a really good example of like things that particular granular modular does really well.
Yeah, I think for textural stuff as well as effect stuff. These kind of worlds are quite useful.
100%.
Like drones and stuff to go underneath tracks that it could, like, to the listener, it could be on track until you modulate it. It's that bedded in and affected and weird. Which can be quite a fun one.
And you know, if that's then going by the right type of multi-effects, you can be doing a lot to be making that sit in your mix with things like sidechain and EQ and whatever it is. So it does really fit. You know, also arguably taking the right source and putting it in the granular will do that already for you, but
yeah, that's true.
Whatever. I guess there'd be like a bunch of work that you'd have to think about, like, okay, cool, like what's the source that I'm going to put into the module in the first place? And then how am I going to be able to do that in a way where I can always keep the pitch at 0?
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy for that to always sit in your show, because you've got to be making these, like always trying to analyze, like, right, where are the pitfalls? Where does this particular piece of technology like not do so well? Mm-hmm. And how do we make sure that we account for that for its output?
Yeah.
And anything sample based is always like, right, how do we make sure that we just keep that pitch bit at 0?
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's fun in a in like a creative context, but when it comes to live, it's like, try tuning your oscillators by ear in a noisy club.
Yep.
With people screaming. Just saying it out loud sounds nightmarish. Well, do you know what? And we approached this on the George Fitzgerald show in a way, because we had a big chat actually about his Stellar Drifting campaign. We had a big chat about him adding modular, because he'd done a lot of it on the record. So there was like a big okay, cool, we need to talk about this to figure out like how we approach representing like quite a key part of how this came together. Mm-hmm. And we did agree that like adding oscillators may, even to do effect stuff, might be, we just kind of couldn't agree on like which ones would get used and where they'd fit and these kinds of things. And what we ended up doing was a effects modular system instead. So it's all like weird delays, fun, interesting filters, and then we set up a load of send return routing, so that he could send pretty much any part of the gig into the modular effects, and then just create these weird spacey, like blooms and whooshes, and it worked really, really well, because it meant that when there was like a little bit where like they're kind of, arguably musically there wasn't a lot to be doing, he could start embellishing on that and rethinking that and remixing that on the fly, like basically producing on the show, because arguably that's what you'd be doing in the studio anyway, right? It's like, let's experiment with that thread. What's that sound like? Well, that's cool, I'll change that like that.
Yeah, literally. No, it's great.
But that was like different every night, and especially like when you're approaching shows with producers, it's like you've got to somehow find a way to represent that production, right? Mm-hmm. A guitar band in a rehearsal room is people playing their guitars and their drums and singing, whereas for a producer, like taking that studio, all of that studio stuff, and finding a way for it to make sense in a live setting, it's hard to reproduce that. It's hard to,
it is,
I don't know what the word it is that I'm looking for, but it's hard for that for you to show people that and it still be engaging, rather than you sitting there listening to snare drums, which is the reality.
And to give like the audience an insight into that, like you kind of chasing that dragon in the studio where you find those cool bits and that excitement, and to convey that to an audience is quite tricky.
It's quite tricky, and I think you need to start approaching like custom effects, like custom boxes of, not custom, but like something that you've created in a different and interesting way that isn't just this is my secret preset in Sound Toys.
Definitely. And I think lots of these kind of worlds that we're going into talking about now is often that little bit that's so unique to them. I know a particular favourite of ours are dub sirens.
Oh man, the dub siren is so sick.
And
it's a little Silver put it on his show. That was the first time I'd ever seen one.
Oh, they're brilliant.
And he just turns up and he's just like, I bought this dub siren. I was like, what the fuck is that? He was like, just as dub sirens, mate. And you guys plugged it in. It was just like, shit, that is so good.
Dub siren through a delay pedal. It's like it's instant fun.
Mate, it's the best. And which was the one that he used? What was the...
It's a French company called Benidub.
And literally the interface on that pedal is immaculate. Just like from a piece of design, you don't need to know anything about making risers to make a riser with the Benidub. Which I think is brilliant. That's like such a good... what a great way to approach a synthesizer. You can just like, press the waveform you want and start fucking with it. And it just does cool shit.
And if you want to get deep, you can get deep. I mean, we've put one on lots of gigs, but even the Sampha show, there was one on that, and we'd start it from a specific pitch.
Right, nice.
Which was great. And you
love that, like tuning your fucking Benidub.
It's so good. No, that was great. But yeah, they've kind of snuck their way into quite a lot of...
Yeah, and like it's quite a pricey box for what it is, I think. But at the same time, you get this incredible quality with it.
Yeah.
And it is actually just really, it is just really good, and it does what it does really quickly, really well. It sounds really fat and analog and like juicy. You know, it's like it does exactly what it says it's going to do.
Yeah.
And it just does that perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, you can't send MIDI to it.
Nope.
I think you can send CV to it. Or is that
you can
maybe
send,
one of the other ones?
You can send it a trigger input, I think.
You can send it a trigger. Right, great. Well, I mean, that sounds pretty cool to like get your drum machine doing a little bit. Anyway, whatever. Stop him doing a gig that doesn't exist. We should buy one. We should definitely buy one of those. Benny Dub, great. Yep. What a great little effects box. There's also, like, actually, we've got a GR1 there, which is really, really good for texture stuff. It's just like hardware granular. You know, I can just click because there's one in your modular there. Yeah. But then we've also got this, which, I mean, that's just a patch it opens with, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Which is great.
That's so good.
Just with the way that Oscar's modulating that is, it's got this big fader on the front that you can move from left to right to like scrub through the sample for where like the granules kind of like, I don't know, stem from. I don't really know what the lingo is for it. Yeah. But it's awesome. It's really amazing. Fun. It's really immediate. That's the cool thing about the GR1 is like, you just put a sample in it. Yeah. It's good to go. You know?
That's such a good synth.
Yeah. It's great fun straight away. And then you know, there's lots of other parameters to be tweaking with it to start customizing those sounds. You could do a lot of modulation in there. It's got some effects in there. You can also send it MIDI to play notes. Yep. So if you're clever, which I am often not with it, you can kind of be a really nice polysynth. If you're putting in like, you know, just like a C of whatever sample it is that you've decided you're going to do, and then you can start playing it. Yeah. And it can do lead lines, it can do all sorts of weird stuff. And you can change, you know, you can fuck about with the amp envelope until it starts to behave the way you were looking for it to behave. Yeah. Because ultimately it's like a strange sampler.
Yeah, definitely.
Like granular synthesis as a whole is like kind of just sampling. Yeah. But it's an interesting way of doing it.
Yeah. No, it's wicked. And with the spray, you get, if you have a sample with modulation, you get that unpredictability that you might be looking for from a sound like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, really, it's kind of, to get these sounds sounding really nice is often like trying to find ways to shitify them. Yeah. And adding consistency, because your ear doesn't really like things that are very perfect. Yeah. It likes things that are a bit weird and wonky and slightly off. And that's like the analog warmth myth, isn't it? It's just like, it's basically just fucking noise, bro. Like, it's noise, it's rusty capacitors, for fuck's sake. But, you know, whatever, like, that is how you get it, and however you can find ways to simulate that, and whether that's LFOs to change tiny amounts of stuff over time, or whether that's, you know, an interesting sample in your granular synthesis that will be, you know, the granules in that granular, if they're all kind of different and slightly off all the time, you're basically creating the same sort of effect, right? Yeah. So it can be really, really good for that, which is awesome. I mean, also, like you did just there, you could just press play on it and just leave it to loop. Yeah. Nice.
Does the same thing. I mean, we're doing that now, really. It's just...
Yeah. Granular synthesis is really cool, man. It's a great way of creating your interesting textures. Yeah. So I think we probably, if we're doing experimental stuff, we should probably also address Max for Live and Max for Live synthesizers. Because it would be irresponsible not to address them. Yeah. Because you need to be careful.
Yes. Yeah.
It's cool.
It is great. Max can be wicked. And you can get some really interesting results. Yeah. Especially Max for Live and its integration. Yeah. But there's a few things that it doesn't do that is fairly live important, like limiting how much CPU it's using.
It'll just grab and grab and grab.
Yep. I know if you want to integrate jitter and do any visual stuff with your synthesis, there's no limit to the frame rate that it can use. It's just using as much CPU as it possibly can.
Love that.
So yeah.
Love that.
It's kind of
so much.
the kind of thing that you might want to think about if you're wanting to use Max. You might need a Max Lappy.
Yeah, totally. I guess it's trying to appreciate like the places where it's going to hold you back and like making sure you've accounted for them. You know, because the last thing you want is to base your whole show around an interesting use of like a Max for Live synth, for example, and then it crashes every time you open your laptop and you can't figure out why.
Yep. Because,
you know, what you've made is glitchy, what you've downloaded from the internet is glitchy, like whatever it is. Like the thing about Max is because it's such a sandbox for creating things. It also means that people have a bit too much control over moving in that sandbox who may not necessarily have like, you know, plug-in development experience. That's not to say that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's just that when you need to not lose audio for 60 minutes, remove any risk of losing audio for that 60 minutes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and like bug hunting is not a fun thing to be doing. Like bug hunting is the worst thing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Even with fairly simple MIDI rigs, sometimes stuff, you know, someone's programmed something badly or something's routed something the wrong place or you've routed something the wrong place because you're still programming and you broke something. You know, hunting it down, if it's something niche, is the worst.
Yeah.
It is like, this is the shittest thing to do ever. So trying to remove that so that you can be creating and performing and doing the things that are important. You know, it's mildly hypocritical to say don't ever use any Max for Live, because that's absolutely not the case. There's definitely a few little utilities that we've used in the past, like tone generators for auto switching playback rigs. We always use a Max for Live one because you can package it inside of the show file, which is really useful.
It is.
But like it has an oscillator that just goes sine wave.
Yeah.
That's all it does. It's very hard for that to become buggy.
Yeah.
If it is buggy, then how the fuck did you make it buggy? Well done. But once you start to do more interesting things that are more complex, you just need to look out.
Yeah, definitely. You know? In such a similar way to modular, it's like there's so many ways to make one thing.
100%.
It's up to you to make sure that you do that in the simplest possible way if you do decide to use it.
Yeah, totally. Like a modular rig can bring so much joy and so much uniqueness to your show. And as in the same amount that it can do that, it can also completely ruin it.
Yeah.
So it's just like understanding like that beast and being like, you know, with something like the Peak or the Moog, you're much likely to have it's much more of like a high success rate in terms of you get your Moog to do the bass, the subsequent 37 to do the bass. Chances are you're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard not to have a good time. It's a simple subtractive synthesizer.
Yeah. There's a big old cut-off knob.
Oh my God, the filter knob is huge.
Yeah.
Man, if this podcast does well, right, and we start to develop a proper fan base, and people start turning us into fucking memes.
That's one.
That's going to be one of those fucking memes.
Oh, yeah.
I might even leave this in the edit of the podcast. It's like a challenge to our first round of fans. God. Cut everything Oscar and I say out of context.
Yeah.
Well, especially actually, you've got a proper music career to go and do, so like, it's going to be even more hilarious to do with you. Don't worry, I'll cut that bit out. Maybe. Maybe. But, you know, equally, like with the Peak, if you want a poly on a gig, the Peak's going to do it really well. If you want something to do acidy stuff, like the Peak does that really well.
Yeah.
You know, if you want acid sounds, the Behringer 303 clone will do that really, really well.
Yeah.
And you're very unlikely to have a problem.
Definitely.
But also, if you want to go further than the abilities of those boxes, like if you want poly or you want a weird delay, the sub 37 won't do that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're going to have to get something else. Whereas with the modular world, it's like either you add a new module or maybe you just need to repatch your patch a little bit. Maybe you need to send an envelope generator off into something you didn't expect to send it into, and that's going to start creating that really cool and interesting experimental weird stuff.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's very true. But with something like the Peak that is so encompassing, there's definitely space to get really experimental with it.
Yeah,
you can just push your synthesis into different places.
Can you feedback the filter on the Peak?
Let's turn.
Oh, have you already done it?
Should we just turn these oscillators off and see?
Because that's like a fun thing to do. Is like, getting these synths to do stuff.
Big time.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's fucking loud as well. Great. I mean, because that's like really interesting. So actually on that, let's just quickly go through this. So we've got oscillator 1, 2, and 3 are turned down.
Yep.
That ring to 1 and 2 probably don't need that, right?
Yep.
VCA gain is up. Noise is down. Everything is down.
Yep. That's just the filter.
But when you're hitting audition.
Yep.
So there's an audition button, which is supposed to be to audition patches as you're like quickly cycling through them.
Yeah.
But it basically activates a voice.
Yeah.
Which at the moment is a voice of silence.
Yeah. But it's pinging that filter.
If we like turn the resonance all the way down and open that filter, and as you hit that audition button, there's nothing there.
Yep.
So it's literally like as that res goes up. Oh, there it is. There's that. Yeah. Got the fucking clangers in here, mate. Yeah, great. I mean, that's the same with all the filters, right?
Ooh.
Well, the bandpass is pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah. The bandpass is great on that synth.
And do you know what? With like a sound like that, because if you just hold it, this. That could be a build-up.
Yep.
Depending on your show.
I mean, we've got a little LFO depth that's just there.
Oh, nice. And that's all just the Peaks filter.
Yep.
And actually,
no effects.
This kind of weird resonancy, feedback, ringy stuff that you get from synth filters, this isn't the only thing that does it. You could do the same with a Moog. There's lots of synths will do that. So, there's even an argument for taking these kinds of boxes and being like, okay, cool, well, I don't need it in this part.
Yeah.
Well, let's get it to do
yeah.
We'll just have it doing the weird effects noise when I need it.
Mm-hmm.
Just jump over there, quick little,
yeah,
and then off you fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, and having it, do you know what? It's going to sit in between that and a hi-hat sound.
Yeah, exactly.
There is lots of space. I guess just having something that can do weird stuff.
Yeah.
And push sound design a little bit.
Push your sound design a little bit. And do you know what? Like, and the thing with that, so where's this at the moment? Have we got our LFO up?
Yeah.
There we go. So, I mean, that's kind of similar to what the Benedub does, actually. But, that kind of sound it couples really well then sending it through some multi-effects like the Quad Cortex, right? Because, I mean, especially with I would definitely consider that an unruly sound that you need to be careful with.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very wonky. So, even with the Quad Cortex being on an unsaved patch, we can literally just add like a bit of compression real quick to that in our dynamic section, wherever the dynamic section has gone. There we go, compressor. And then we've got like a stereo opto is probably a nice place to start with that. Just to keep it under control a little bit, which you can actually already hear.
Yeah, that's lovely.
that's like, it's almost got rid of too much of its life, hasn't it? Maybe I'll just knock that threshold up a little bit. There we go. It's quite a lot of gain reduction there, isn't it? And then, something that's going to work really nicely after that is some sort of reverb, really. Yeah. That's probably where I'd go straight away. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
So let's just pop a plate on it. Oh no, always. Nah, probably don't want a shrimmer on that actually. Just a plate on that straight away. I mean, Great. Give me a big boomy techno kick.
Yeah.
And a fucking 909 clap, my dude.
Yeah.
I'm dancing all night for that.
Yeah.
Just you and a 909 and the peak riser. Fucking great.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, that took us all of 2 seconds. And after that, we can add some EQ to bring the bottom end out of that. Because if you have a listen, like, I don't know if you're going to want that bottom end or not. That compressor seems to be fucking hammering it really hard down there, and that's probably because there's a lot of low end in there. You know, we can stick a bit of EQ before that on the quad cortex, and you know, we've got like a nice stereo sound there.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great patch. I want more of that patch.
Yeah, that is quite fun.
Oh man, that is really great. What a great bit of sound design. Okay, so now you can do synths.
Yeah.
On your show.
Yeah.
You can take all this knowledge, all of these things, and you can go and make some cool shit and perform with synths on your show, hopefully better than you could before.
Yeah.
It's so broad. I mean, there's definitely stuff we haven't covered, but that just means we're going to have to talk about synthesizers more. Oh no! Yeah, man, look. Fucking podcast about synths and how we do it, and we've definitely missed stuff, but we'll have to do it again. I'm more than happy to talk about synthesizers more with you, Oscar.
Yeah, always.
Thank you so much.
Oh, likewise.
For hanging out with a peak. It's a bit Groundhog Day, sitting in a room late at night with a peak with you.
Yeah.
That's been a lot of our life over the years. But,
literally.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much. You can synth now. Anything that you want to add, Oscar?
Now.
You can synth now.
No, I don't know. I think it's I think for people that aren't into synths, it's a really great world that can be as important as the notes that are being played. Is the sound that's playing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, encourage anyone who's recording into a little DAW somewhere to actually get into those soft synths and dive.
Yeah, get into the soft synths.
Yeah.
Buy one of the Behringer clones.
Yeah.
They're so cheap.
Yeah.
If I was 16 again,
yeah, I
would have bought all the Behringer clones.
Oh God, I've got the Model D at home and I love it.
Yeah, it's actually really good. And you know, the more people that are using actual hardware, the better. Like, your music exists in real life. As much as, you know, grabbing a splice sample is a quick way to like make a sick beat. Like, at some point, people are going to consume it in a world, and they're going to have a moment that they experience with it. Yeah. So
definitely. I mean,
bring those moments into your process.
You saw how happy that made us.
Oh man, we had such a good time. It's just like a fucking filter feeding back. We're just like, yeah! It's outrageous.
Literally.
But it's true though, man. Like, yeah, music is a real thing that like real people consume in real moments in their lives and attach, you know, different emotions and experiences to like the songs that you're making, the songs that you're performing, and like that might be a particular experience that like they remember for the rest of their lives. And you know, bring more of that into what you're doing. You know, make it real.
Yeah,
it's much better when it's real.
Yeah,
with other human beings.
Yeah.
And on that note, podcast!
Mic drop.
Nah, that was the end. We're way to end the podcast. The Shofar podcast is brought to you by the music direction team at A Work in Progress, a live electronic music direction company. If you want to find out more about us, you can get us on YouTube at A Work in Progress -UK, on TikTok and Instagram, aworkinprogress.uk, or on our website, aworkinprogress.uk, where you can also find our blog that has the show notes, diagrams, patches, all the stuff that you're going to need to help understand the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next month. Podcast outro done! Fuck yeah!